In the previous lecture, we were at the end of the clause number 8 of the part 1 of the first schedule, right? We have discussed the council guidelines that it will be applicable in all types of audits, right? And then we also went out to understand the meanings of certain words and the difference between the certificate and a report, right? So I hope these insights to these words, right, they'll help you to interpret the question better and reply accordingly, right? Because these are the small tips and tricks, right, due to which some students are not able to score good marks in audit because they do not pay attention to what the question is asking, what is the meaning behind specific words, right? Because every question, every case study can be entirely oppositely changed by the use of a single word in audit. It is a technical subject like that, right? If instead of a report it's a certificate, your entire answer changes. So you have to pay attention as to what is written. Just remembering the clause and answering accordingly will not fetch you marks in the examination, right? So as I told you that in this lecture we will be discussing about the certain case studies, right? The case studies that has been already given by the institute. The first case study that we will be discussing will be on the topic that is communication was made on the day of commencement. So basically, in the case of N.K. Johri versus N.K. Jain, S.N. Johri versus N.K. Jain, what happened was when the auditor commenced the work of audit, that is the day when he realized, oh, I had to communicate to the previous auditor. Let me write it to him. So he had already commenced his work and then he sent a letter to the previous auditor, right? So in this case, he was deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct under the clause number 8. Right? Why? Because if you remember, then you were supposed to communicate with the previous officer before accepting the appointment, right? You should have waited for his response, and if within reasonable time that auditor did not respond, you could have commenced your work, right? But you should give that reasonable time in between, and you should make that communication, because now if you have started the work and now if the auditor sends you some information that will force you not to take up the audit, or that will create an impact that you will try not to take up the assignment, but you have already started it, the work has begun, your name is already there. Now even if you leave and someone else comes, he will be referring to your work and say that this part of work was done by this auditor, right? Or then you have to back out from the assignment entirely, and then you have already wasted the client's time, right? So there are a lot of complications that come around. So it is said as per the clause 8 that you should communicate well in advance than commence the audit, right? And the second case was the case where the communication was made post commencement. So definitely on the face of it, it is wrong. If you cannot make a communication on the date of commencement, how can you make it even after commencement? That is even a bigger blunder. And this was the case of Radhesham versus K.S. Dubey in 1974, right? Everything was done very correctly. The communication was made. It was made by a registered post and given, but only the timing for that communication was after the commencement, and hence the chartered accountant was deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct under the clause number 8, right? Then again you had a case where it was communicated via a certificate of posting instead of a registered letter, or certificate of instead of posting it should be an acknowledgement due, right? So this was the case of M.L. Agarwal versus J.S. Bhatti, 1975. So you know that as per the clause, if you are not making a communication via the acknowledgement due, you will be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct. That is very clear, right? But in this case, what happened is that the chartered accountant went ahead to file a suit in the High Court, an appeal in the High Court actually, that the council has considered me guilty of certain professional misconduct where I don't think it's a professional misconduct because I have made a proper communication on time to the previous auditor via certificate of posting. So what is wrong in it? Right? Then what did the High Court do? In this case, the High Court went ahead to study the code of conduct. Right? And then it gave out an interpretation that in communication with, this term in communication with, which was mentioned in the code of ethics, actually refers that your communication has to be proved. How do you prove that yeah, you have communicated? Right? Now consider the case of a football match. In this case, you shoot the ball. Is it necessary that you are shooting the ball in the goal post? No, you can shoot the ball anywhere. Or you shoot the ball from your goal post to the other goal post and it did not reach the goal post at all. Will it be a goal ever? Or the goalkeeper stopped it. Is it a goal? No. A goal means when the ball enters the goal post of the opponent team. That is in short, right? I take this very small example, right? So if you consider it in this place, you have sent a letter via post. What is the guarantee that the post has even reached the auditor? Where is the communication complete? There can be a case that the post got misplaced on the way and it did not reach the auditor. And the auditor actually had some definite evidences to show you that yeah bro, you should not be accepting the audit. But since it did not reach him, he did not bother to communicate. And you said, okay, I waited for reasonable time. He did not communicate, so I'm going ahead. So you understand there is a miscommunication in this process. You say that yeah, I have done my part. He was at fault, he did not respond. And he's like, I don't even know what is happening. I did not receive any letter. So what you have to do, that in order to show that you have completed your task properly, you will have to send him the letter with acknowledgement due. That you get an acknowledgement that yes, it has been delivered. Yes, the other person has received it. Only then you can start waiting for the reasonable time for his response. And then if he doesn't and there is something major coming up, then that chartered accountant will be guilty and not you, because he did not inform you. Correct? But in this case, it is vague. Did it reach? Didn't it reach? Did he respond? Didn't he respond? What is the case? Nobody knows. So High Court took a judgment that when it says in communication with, it means you will have to prove that you have communicated to him. And how do you prove? You can prove it only if you have the receipt that yes, it has been delivered. Clear with that? Now apart from this, right, now when we say, like in the previous case, when we say that yeah, you have to send it by a acknowledgement due posting, right, acknowledgement due address. So in that case, what do you do? Or how do you know that yes, it has to be acknowledgement due? The council in the code of conduct does not mention it. It just writes in communication with. But again, these are the decisions that we refer to when we have to prove that it has to be an acknowledgement due. Right? Now this case study will turn the course of action. So similarly, now there are certain more doubts that can pop up in the examination in this section, in this clause, which can be like, if it is the case of a government agency, it hardly matters. Whatever it is, whoever it is, if there was an auditor prior to you, you will have to communicate. Right? Don't be confused if they mention any government agency or anything. Secondly, they can also trick you by saying that the agency or the company where you are going to audit, your client, they have communicated the message to the previous auditor that yes, we have appointed you. Now will that be sufficient? No, because that will not force him to respond to you, because you haven't asked anything. He'll say, okay, you have taken him, good. If he is ready to do, there was so much problem with you, but still if that chartered accountant is ready, it's good for him. He'll say that, he'll keep silent. But on your end, what happened? You are like, okay, you informed him, great. If something was bad, he would have informed me. No, who has that time, man? And apart from this, there is one more thing that you should keep in mind, that the requirement of clause 8 will be deemed to be fulfilled only if, first of all, you had sent the information or the communication via a registered post, acknowledgement due. Second, right, that the acknowledgement that you received was also positive. If it was a negative acknowledgement and you said, yeah, I used the thing and I got an acknowledgement, I am done. No, if it's a negative acknowledgement, means I did not reach, right? Try it again. In the absence of the both, you will be deemed to be guilty of professional misconduct, right? And this was also decided in the case of R.M. Singhi versus R.V. Agarwal, right? So these are basically the things that you should keep in mind when you are discussing or talking about the clause number 8. And if you want even further references, then we will come back to this when we are discussing the questions from the practice manual, right? So we'll take up one and one question from the practice manual after we have completed all the clause, and then over there you will get a better clarity about this topic, right? So with this, I think we have almost completed the entire clause. Almost what we have completed the entire clause. We have nothing remaining in the clause. All the key points has been highlighted, has been explained, right? Just pay detailed attention to the words that have been mentioned on the screen above, because those are the words that can twist the entire scene of the action, right? Your entire answer can go for a toss if you do not pay attention on these words in the examination. Okay, so I think that will be all for the day today. In the next lecture, we'll commence with the clause number 9, and then we have, I think, just 4 more clauses to go from this part, and the other parts are very small: part 2, part 3 and part 4. And the next part that will be lengthy will be part 1 of the second schedule, right? So with this, we have almost completed half of the entire chapter, and then we'll commence with the rest, second half of the chapter, right? So thank you so much for watching this video. Stay tuned, and I'll see you back in the next lecture.